Okay, I'm supposedly going. Make sure my audio is working right. Hello, hello. Yep. It's a hot mic. So I'm preparing to stream by doing my advertising now in the beginning of this. I don't know if you can read anything on the screen. I don't know how poor the transmission rate is good. If it's any good. But I'll be reading things, and some things are repeats. I do a lot of repeating if you're new to the stream. And I don't mind questions of any kind, but nothing, I don't need to be asked anything personal. But I'm open-minded about that. I'm not, I don't avoid certain subjects. But if I can answer them by reading my blog, that's what I prefer a lot of times now, because I want to try to use the time now for the new things that I'm observing and feeling and thinking and relating to things that Tiendo taught and said and did that we have a tremendous record of, that some of us that are being sued to try to keep from the public, sued for trying to provide to the public. Because even though the next level, I believe, can take advantage of everything and knows exactly what what direction things are probably going to go, and how they use everything for a positive, and even with the ability of information to come out, all at once, I don't think is a negative. Or Doe would have designed it that way. When he left, he would have had that instruction from T. Because anybody that listens to the Beyond Human tapes, and which Kathy and I just listened to today, Beyond Human chapter 11, not session 11, most of, and Doe is all about his older member, his Heavenly Father in the old terminology, the less accurate terminology, but accurate and still pertinent to use, so that people know we're talking about that history. Let me know in the chat if you can't hear me, but I actually haven't gone to my, I've been talking, so I didn't go to my YouTube channel yet. So I'll do that, and then I'll know whether you can hear me or not. Yeah, my face is all messed up as usual, but the text isn't bad. It looks like it's somewhat readable. Not the scriptural text in red isn't so good. And Sunshine says, hello, Sawyer. Hello to you. Seeing any orbs or drones where you're at? No, we haven't seen any, have we? I mean, you saw a streak the other day. It was probably a month ago. Casey's here, says hello to everyone.
Your volume's on your computer.
I thought I turned it off. I did. I swear to you, I did. Maybe I turned it back on again when I tried to move that. Yeah, I could hear me. So, the Finch show is here, loud and clear, he says. Casey says, though your video signal is very blurry, as are some moving still photos, yes. The red text is blurred some, yes. I can see it on my laptop screen. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that, Casey. I guess I could, if we could afford it, we could buy a booster, a signal booster, and see if that does anything. I tried to use them in the past, and I didn't know that they actually did anything. But maybe it's what you get what you pay for. And right now we can't afford anything like that extra now. So, apologize. I wish it was clear. The Finch show says, same for me. The video is streaming low quality. I think it's your local computer settings because YouTube is 1080. Yeah, well, see, I'm on it's a T-Mobile account. It's a home system, and so what's that? We're in the middle of nowhere. We're like 40 miles from San Antonio, or so. Anyway, so well, we know that we only get 3 bars on that. We can do these streams, but less than that, the stream doesn't even work. And so right where we are, sometimes can be okay. You know, there's a range where 3 bars.
We need to be in the front of the park. Oh, you know what? I can put it in front of the window. That helps, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, Kathy's going to move our little internet box. Chief 89 says, hola. Volume is a little low, but also in general, my phone max volume is rather low. Yeah, I don't know how to be any louder than I am. I should get closer to the microphone. That's the best thing I can do, right? And the Finch show says, your voice is what matters. Nice to see you too. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think that's right. Casey Strange, there are ways. I'll PM you sometime. You pretty much have to configure your streaming software to be friendly with your Wi-Fi connection. Yeah, I know there's some ways to tweak that I just, for some reason, never really comprehended. Because there's some of the terms that I used, I just don't know how. And then I would go searching on, how to do it, and they would be talking in different terms. And it's like, and different software and different. And I mean, I'm not like a stupid person in terms of software, but I don't mean stupid. That's not really appropriate because it's not stupidity if you don't know software. But I'm not ignorant about it, I guess, or uneducated entirely, except the new technology. Anyway, so I probably could figure it out, but if you can just point me to the right place and even give me the numbers, that would be wonderful, because then I won't have to put hours into trying to figure it out. So Casey says, I'm currently building a desktop to stream on Wi-Fi. The video card will help offload the demands for my CPU when I use VCRs and older game consoles. Oh, the video card. Okay, that's interesting. All right. Well, let me know what you find. I'd appreciate it. I'm currently hotspotting with my phone. It's amazing how it works. Yeah, I haven't tried that yet either. I don't know if my phone is even capable right now, actually. But I know you have to buy that as a feature with a lot of phones. Like I used to have an iPhone that did that, but I didn't even try to use it. So Casey says it's about the bit rate on OBS. Your connection can be good, but your bit rate can be troubleshot. So let me pause from this, and because I still got to send my link to my Facebook account. All right, there's some drums. Drums along the Mohawk Hawk.
You can tell somebody who doesn't know what they're doing compared to somebody who does.
There it is. I got it. And now I can do it to Twitter X. And I'll get away with.
Let's see.
Okay, did that. Okay, so I think I'm just going to take out my chat here, and then I'll back with you. Okay, so let's see what else is in the chat room. Oh yeah, video cards are the thing to upgrade more than the CPU. Interesting.
Do you have a computer still? A tower?
No. But you could probably buy a standalone video card.
I think I still have a tower.
Well, it might be too old to actually do it justice.
Well, I can't remember if we
Oh,
parted it to Goodwill or not.
oh, I see. Yeah, I don't remember either. Then Finchler says that he read an article today that President Jimmy Carter swore he saw a UFO and vowed to reveal the truth, but he never did. Rest in peace. And then in 1973, while serving as governor of Georgia, he filed a report documenting the sighting with the International UFO Bureau. Yes, I was aware of what Jimmy Carter said and wanted to do about the subject. Yeah, I don't know if you've watched all the clips of Ronald Reagan talking about, people from another planet. I've got there's a video on my on this channel that has some clips of him, I believe, and in several circumstances, and a clip of Richard Blumenthal from just a few years ago, a handful of years ago, saying all kinds of very, very, very interesting things. Casey says that Carter also said the people who died in Jonestown were not your average everyday Americans. Is that right? That's interesting. I'd like to hear more about what he said about that. I disagree with his notion. Oh, okay. That was from Casey. I wasn't commenting myself yet. But Vinny Dutra says, hi Sawyer and Kathy, I recently learned in my Bible studies to differentiate Zion from Jerusalem. You probably know this already, just wanted to share. Well, when I talk about Jerusalem, and I think I don't actually haven't been able to do a search yet on, well, maybe I have been able to, but I should have done it before naming this post about the New Jerusalem. I should have did a search on those material to see if I could find what he said about it, because I don't remember exactly. So saying that, taking it with an even bigger grain of salt is my understanding that I got from indirectly from many things that Tiendo said about the geographic area. So I mainly think about Jerusalem as a geographic area, but it's also the area where the next level, I believe, is not a stretch to say, has a spacecraft posted with that geographical area in their primary environment that they're working with the most directly on the planet during the time when an older member is returning to their task of bringing students through the birth canal into membership in the evolutionary level above human, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, the many-membered kingdom. And so when so Zion, I think, represents that area to people, and the promise of to the children of Israel of the land of milk and honey, and also to in theory, to the idea that it's God's chosen people that are occupying those areas still, even though God's chosen people are not about primarily the physical vehicles that we humans have, but is about the mind and the quality of the soul, the content of the soul, that is what is born potentially into membership in the next level. And so that soul is what is most important to cultivate. And that's also why the description of the type of cultivation that the Kingdom of God has provided through the record books has been diminished so and diluted so and distorted so to where these terms and everything, these religious terms and the religious locations that are thought to be the religious founding, and you know, people think almost, people think in all different ways, I know that. But in general, at least in the public face of what many of the individuals talk about on different programs, radio programs that I hear, and chat rooms, websites, all kinds of publications, through many years of observation and experience talking to people one-on-one, is that they get saturated with thinking that they are elevated when they become filled with the interpretation of the mind in the records, and think that it's all that their mind then is the same as God's mind. That it's the God within. In the New Age, then it's the God within, or the cosmic consciousness, or the universal mind, which is all a distortion of the fact that there is a universal mind, but it's only from the next level's point of view, and it doesn't go to the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, except in degrees. And if the humans don't receive it when it's provided, then they don't upgrade their terminology. They don't get out of their spirituality. They don't get out of their religiosity, because they're filled with doubts that there can be anything more. And I know that I've had people, show me this in many ways, and I'd be glad to be wrong. So, this doesn't apply to everybody, of course. But the thing is, then, when we take the position that we can't be wrong about something that we believe in, then we're not opening up to what's possible, and to show us where we are wrong. So the key to that is asking the next level to show us what is right. And how do we do that? Well, we reach to the stars and ask for the highest source that we can imagine to help us recognize the truth when it comes to us. And then we, if we do that, if we ask, and they know that we're asking because we really want to know, which is, it's on the meters of the next level members on their spacecrafts, that they can read those thoughts, those radio waves, that we're all able to transmit to the next level when we have in mind that it's going outside this atmosphere, beyond, into the stars. That's why the whole term heaven came about, because that's reality of where the next level have their spacecrafts, in the distant heavens. It's been talked about throughout different religious groups, that there's 7 heavens or 3 heavens. And I think some of the terminology of the original Jews may be in the Torah to some degree. I don't remember where it is in the Torah, but maybe through even the Talmud and other materials, there was thought to be 3 heavens. And I don't think that's necessarily far-fetched to think about as a generality. But with the highest heaven being where the next level is, where God's kingdom is, where they're comfortable, where their environment is, where their many mansions are, many dwelling places, many laboratories, because they don't sit around, on clouds playing harps. Anyway, but there are actually more heavens than that, potentially. But if we reach up to the highest one, and then we look for the answer, look for the response, because if we're asking, and the lower forces don't ask. I was just reminded of this by listening to a lot of what I'm saying. Actually, I was reminded of by listening to the Beyond Human session 11. People can get an awful lot if they can put their doubts aside long enough to listen to these tapes from Doe and try to understand where he's coming from, and try to, it's going to be an effort, because the human kingdom doesn't want anybody to go off their chosen pathways that they've become comfortable in, or and that goes for the individuals that are that will say something to me about what's not possible about the kingdom of God. That's like that's an ignorant statement to make, because by the very evidence of everything that we consider to be from the kingdom of God, we know next to nothing about how to create all these life forms and all these systems and all these planets and environments and oxygen mixed with, the precise number, amount of other gases so that we can breathe. And, it's like there's so much science in all this, and that is evidence. That's evidence, big time. But it's so big time that if you're anesthetized by yourself or your intelligence or a lifestyle as well can be anesthetizing. You can be so into substances and things, and sexuality is a substance as well, very powerful one. It reduces your ability to see things in a more common sense way that the next level knows is true. And so what we're doing is potentially getting little bursts of what is true. And of course, when T and Do were here, they were giving us major cannon fire of bursts of awareness of what's possible. And all that is still available to us to examine, but all kinds of forces try to work against it. But it also takes time for people to get into their heads certain things and not give so much ammunition to the lower forces to put their spins on things, to where people then block out even looking into the Heaven's Gate information any further, because they can't imagine that it would be correct, righteous, and even from God to for somebody to choose to lay down their own vehicle. Even though that gets twisted then into thinking that that's like a something to take lightly, and even make into a common kind of way of expressing dissatisfaction with the world and what we're having experiences with. As like that's a solution, when it's not, because human vehicles, human bodies, human people need to have experiences, and their physical body was provided by the next level, indirectly, but even directly by the next level nurturing generations of humans so that they could actually push and pull on their minds and push their way out of the disinformation in order to start to put into effect as much as they choose to in order to gain back or gain more common sense about what things are true. And I had, there's no way to describe the amount of the value of being with Tiendo. But it's all about what I took from it. And what I took from it is some proportion to what I gave to them. Because it's about giving to the next level and then getting back more and more awareness of their reality. Okay, and that also informs us to the things that we can be trying to improve upon. And we can each have our own little, group of things that we're working on, and we all do. I can't imagine that somebody doesn't have something that they want to improve upon, and it's. And this goes to the whole the question that was asked by forgot who it was that asked that question about the social. It was I always just had it again in my head.
Is it in the chat room?
Not now. I don't think they're here. Anyway, he was asking about social things. Is it like next level thinking, I guess, to want to improve the social conditions of people and things like that. And I didn't give as thorough of a response as I feel like I could have. Hi, old school Dave, and I'll get over to you, Finch, there in a second. But yes, though we just came upon, I came upon it before, but though talked about humanitarianism as about the best the human can be when there's no older member present. And that's why Jesus, said that the second commandment was, I believe, to love your neighbor as yourself. To treat your neighbor as yourself with the same respect. And it didn't mean how into bed with your neighbor, because, necessarily, that's always a choice for humans. But that's not what the word love meant in that context. Anyway, so, but so I probably don't know, as a theologian, I don't consider myself a theologian, so I don't know what the best theologian's definition of Zion is. Okay, but I think of it as uh, of the state of mind of overcomers of the world that are overcoming the world and all its behaviors and ways, which means actually becoming a new creature because you're no longer mammalian. So you're no longer reproducing. There's no reason for marriages because there's no reproduction. And there's no reason for sexuality because there's no reason to be attracted to somebody else in that way. Where attraction to somebody else would be of the mind more. I mean, it can be of the vehicle as well because the vehicle can also houses some of the mind. And Doe talked about that in terms of how his vehicle was even who he was, who he knew he was, and connected with his older member. And it was another way he said it was that his vehicle was cooperating. It was agreeing to stand aside from the mind that was being brought into it by him and by the students, because it was the same process. And another thing that Doe brought up in Beyond Human session 11 was that how hard it was for him to get past his doubts when he was first with T and he was first awakening, because he didn't think of himself as wrong, and he thought of himself as an intelligent person. And so I guess some of the things that T would say, he didn't know where to put them. I don't know if he gave us any examples that don't come to mind off the top of my head right now. But one of the tapes we just listened to, I don't know which one it was 242 or something. 247. Doe talked about, how difficult it was with him to be with T because I guess they were disagreeing on things. He didn't use that term, I don't believe, but so that that's a problem we all have when we I don't know. I guess I've always had the problem. I guess a lot of people do, is that we don't necessarily remember the exact terminology of the things we read and listen to and watch on TV. When we're trying to recount a story, we put in our own spin, even if it's just a little tiny spin of a slightly different term, but a slightly different term that can actually say things a lot differently. So that's where it's always better if we can imprint our minds with what another actually said, if we're going to quote them. But it's hard to do that. But I mean, it's another listening is another characteristic of a member of the next level that they learn how to do better and better. And how do you primarily listen? You don't hear other thoughts at the same time as you're listening. You're not evaluating it. You're not thinking about how it relates to you, or how it relates to somebody else, or how it relates to Scripture, or and you wouldn't be like discounting it right away because it sounds too far-fetched, and especially coming from somebody who's talking about people that laid down their vehicles' lives in 1997. So which has all automatically been the airwaves have been filled with that as being an evil event. Nobody disagrees with that hardly. in whatever terms they use for, for evil. Doesn't really matter. It's not to be paid attention to. And so what's the benefit of taking the position that Tiendo and students took? I mean, people that are studying cults, they think that, well, the leader was so full of themselves, they were getting the benefit of just being in charge. Yes, but I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does happen. It does happen big time. Ego, right? And they say that about Lucifer. That's what happened. He got too big for his britches. And he didn't know he was getting too big for his britches, or he probably wouldn't have gone in that direction. But it kind of slips in. And that's what I was talking about before in terms of the whole system of religiosity and New Age spirituality and traditional religions. The leaders get into a position to where they probably don't even know how to think it differently about things, and so they but if they're being fed by different space aliens or deceased humans that gravitated to them, that were initially influenced by space aliens, then that's the only mind that they're going to have around them, and that's why the next level, older members, give instructions to those coming up in that direction, whether it's to become younger members in this generation or younger members at a future opportunity, in a new civilization on another planet. I mean, not necessarily this planet, because Doe felt like this planet was in fine shape for another, to be another garden, used as another garden or more. It's when you think you found it and you don't have your mind open to what more there is. And the difference that you can find with, that can be twisted too, of course, to where people could say, well, Sawyer, you're not open to changing from T and Doe, are you? And, show me something that is greater than what T and Doe are teaching. And if it's greater than what T and Doe are teaching, by my perception, but I want to be open to that, because I can even justify that in terms of still believing 100% in what T and Doe were teaching, because I know I wasn't getting 100% when I was with them, and I'm still not getting 100%, even by watching videos and audio tapes. And so if you can show me something that really, well, then what I'll do is I'll look at that and I'll say, okay, that's good. That makes sense. That makes some sense. That might be. I see things like that all the time in movies and things. To where I feel like I see something differently, a little bit differently than I did before, and I can relate it to T and Doe's information, and I don't know for a fact that I'm relating it the way that they would, because they always had an uncanny ability to relate things and use terminology that just somehow, it just came with like this kind of vibration of, wow, there's something about that response that makes more sense to me than I thought I could imagine making sense. And at the same time, it challenges us. It challenges us. And it's good for us to challenge us, Because if we're not challenged, then we won't grow. We would become like, we'd sit around and watch the grass grow and we'd be happy with that. And, I mean, there's a time and place for that. I think you could be happy with watching the grass grow. But I know for me, I don't think it would last long if that's all I could do with my life, or some equivalent of that. And yet, even though I have the same challenge as anybody else has. And so, even knowing what, and the experiences I had, even knowing what I know, it doesn't make it easier to do the work. And you're caught by surprise all the time. And it's meant to be that way. Like I had the idea, well, in terms of the information coming out from T and Do's minds, I know I've said some things that may have, some others might not agree with, some former members or whatever. That can happen all the time. And I'm not saying that I'm all right about everything I say. I'm not. I could be wrong on about a lot of things I say. But in general, I always offer people to, show me something that's where I'm getting off track from T and O's information, the way that I'm talking about it. Okay, I'm open to that, but but I don't want opinions. I want someone to, and generalities really aren't that good either, unless I'm generally going off the track from what can be justified in what we know from the vast amount of information given to us through the writings and the audio tapes and the videotapes. Anyway, so I know I was going around Jericho, but these are all little points of things that have been occurring to me since the last live stream. And in response to my thinking about the last live stream, and I still have more to go, to bring up things that, in other words, I'm not saying that I'm doing the best I can, but I know I'm not. And that's an uphill battle. That's always going to be an uphill battle. And that's not an excuse for doing a lesser job, okay? But it's just the way it is. And there, I mean, Carlotti wrote on his blog the other day, some time ago, I guess, maybe because I just checked it 2 or 3 days ago, that there was only one thing that the next level was asking us to do, and that was to disseminate the information. And I brought up that they also said to stand, to be willing to stand in their defense. And you can see that written out in Junodi's document, Our Way Team from Deep Space Services Before Departure, in the Heaven's Gate book, to be still found on heavensgate.com. But also they gave the formula for separating from the human kingdom. And the whole book is about how and when the kingdom level above human may be entered. Notice they said may be entered. Those little words are very important, like I was saying before. And you can see the way Doe says things all the time are filled with non-absolutes. I don't know if that's the best way to say it in general form. Well, in terms of, like you'll hear people that are very religious say that this is the way to go to the kingdom of God. And I've accepted Jesus as my Savior, and I've been born again, and now my sins are forgiven me, and now I try to live a righteous life, and by my definition of righteous life, according to some set of guidelines, and I'm going to heaven when I die. I know that I'm going to heaven when I die. I'm saying that this is a mindset that probably quite a few people have. Whether they believe it or not, and they're just saying it because it's been part of the club that they've been in, it's another question. But they may not be capable of bursting that bubble, because it's not it is always a work in progress, and you can drop out at any time. You don't even know you're dropping out. You can drop out in degrees in different ways. Begin to question things that maybe at first you didn't question. But then some of that questioning is like Doe was saying in session 11. He says, people that were hearing this Beyond Human tape, he knew weren't going to believe in everything he said. They were still analyzing it, or, trying to see what it is that they do believe and what makes sense to them and what doesn't. And that's the process. And there's a lot of people that come to this channel, of course, that are doing that, and maybe have been doing it for years and years. And we each get what we believe. And what we believe is what we think, say, and do. In other words, the kind of thoughts that we allow into our heads, and that becomes part of, and what comes out of our mouth, and then our actions in life, actions and reactions all shape the person that we are. And that should be a work in progress for everybody, in my opinion. And even if you're taking steps backwards, and you get fed up with yourself, or you think you're not making any headway, the process is to keep at it, to keep on dealing with the negatives, learning to recognize the negatives quicker and turn them off, convert them on the spot if you can. The quicker the better. And of course, what is the negative and what's the positive is going to be by the eye of the beholder. And I'm not, but I mean, if you want to see what would have been positive things, then you can see the list of things to overcome in the Heaven's Gate book. That there are. That would be the goal, to be working on all those things. If they were things that were challenging to you. And there's all kinds of degrees to working on things. And I mean, I remember when Kathy was communicating with me on Facebook before we became a partnership. And she asked me about something about the requirements, and I believe that the way I remember it is I pointed her towards those two documents, major offense list and lesser offense list, in the Heaven's Gate book on the website, heavensgate.com, if you want to see it. And there was so much in there that it was like, I think anybody that would be looking at that would think, holy smokes, I'll never do this, I mean, but see that, that's, and there have been people that have said to me that, well, they can't do that, so there's no sense in doing anything. So, and that, what's that? Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm good. I was actually. Thank you. Finch said, "Is the dragon with 7 heads said to be in heaven in Revelation 12 a spacecraft or an actual dragon?" Well, it's not an actual dragon in terms of like a snake or a reptile, that flies or whatever. But no, I don't know of any reality to that part of it. But there might be. Who knows? From where the reptilian form of animals came from. I don't know if they're not really called animals, right? Because they don't, by human definitions strictly, but they're life forms that are animalistic. Or maybe they're more reptilians like the birds where they lay eggs instead of giving birth like mammals do. Maybe was that it? Oh, they're cold-blooded. Okay. Well, who knows how that came about, right? I'm not going to try to guess about that. But maybe there is some way of attaching a soul that died to animal life at that level. Who knows? But so in a sense, it is a spacecraft, I believe, Finch. The 7 heads, but not one spacecraft, but many, representing the space aliens, their spacecrafts, whatever spacecrafts they have, from who knows what civilization they could have first got them from, or they could have been spacecrafts designed by the next level. I think that's more likely that the next level designed some spacecrafts that they were given to be a crew on. I'm saying they being meaning actual living beings that were, souls that grew to have some early elementary level of service in the next level, in their keeping, in their structure of hierarchy, if you want to look at it that way, with older members and younger members. That's what the differentiation is. And of course, among the older members, there's some that are more experienced in some things than others. And in younger members, there's some that have more experience in some things than others. And they all work in different departments or the same department, doing different tasks or whatever it is. The needs for those tasks. And so those that dropped away, Doe felt like there were some that dropped away with Lucifer that then felt like Lucifer led them astray. I don't know when they came to that, and that they still want to try to please the Chief of Chiefs.
Do you want me to turn this face heater on, or you want to flannel?
Oh, because that looks like yeah, it is a little cool, but I'm okay. I'm all right. Thanks. Thanks for offering. So anyway, so those individuals that broke away, and some of them didn't side with one another or with Lucifer himself. They're the individuals that they knew how the garden grew. And it appears that there might have been 7 of them. I don't know if that's the correct number, but there's other ways of looking at it that way, and it doesn't really matter. But I think that's what's being referred to as the dragon having 7 heads and 10. What was it? 7 heads and 10 horns? Was that what it was? Let me go look quickly.
Well, in his comment, I think said it.
No, he didn't go into that part.
I see.
I don't think. So let me just go there quickly to make sure I don't misrepresent that.
Holy smokes, it's going to be 88 tomorrow.
Really? 88? Holy smokes, is right. Okay, so it says here in Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay, I did remember it correctly. And 7 crowns upon his heads. Okay, well, we know from the record book history that the word dragon is used for Satan or Lucifer. Okay, so, and Doe confirmed that, actually. He wasn't necessarily confirming what they said. It's what he felt was true about those verses. And those are the only couple verses that he actually put in that kind of interpretation to during the time that I was with him. And 7 heads. So those heads actually comes from the word the head, both of men and often of animals, since the loss of a head destroys life. Let's see, and other words used for that is of persons, of a husband relationship, of Christ, the Lord of the husband, and of the husband relationships. The husband of the Lord of the husband of the church. Well, there you go, the Lord of the husband of the church. Well, you can see that in reverse in terms of Satan, to where Lucifer's got those that are under him, that look to him, and whether they know it or not. And some of them are gonna, but some of them probably don't look to him. But so I don't know if that number 7 represents how many are of his equivalent. Because we're saying that the dragon with 7 heads, that means we don't know that one head is bigger than the others. So he might be one of those 7 is the way to look at it that way anyway. And then the 10 horns would represent, the horn represents the workers, or the military, the ones doing the battles. Instead of being the head of, telling the people, like the generals. The generals are like the heads, right, of the admirals, like the heads, and then the people that are executing their orders would be the ones that were the horns. And they can believe the same way. Just like you see in the military in different countries, to where the generals are in bed with the politicians, or even the dictator and the king, and the king has his Ministry of Defense and all that. So you can look at it in those ways as well. But the way I looked at it was that it didn't seem like it was an accident that the beast was described as having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the beast, in that terminology, was related to being essentially a poisonous mammal. A poisonous being, poisonous meaning to the next level, that they can basically sting you, and so that you wouldn't be able to receive true information. You wouldn't know to recognize true information. And so you're basically glued to the misinformation. And we see that happening all the time as well in politics, and to where deceit is used so much and manipulation is used so much. The next level doesn't do that. They wait for you to ask. And they want to see you even ask more than once. And, to know that you really want what you're asking for. Where the lower forces, they come and tell you how to think. They tell you what to do. They tell you what you must do. They tell you how you must believe. They'll say that you have to believe that Jesus was this and this and this and this and this. Otherwise, you're not going to be saved. There's people that will say that. And they will, if you tell them that they're wrong, they will treat you like Satan. And so some people that get so into their religion that they go around preaching it all the time to people, they don't even know that they're how far afield they're going from. Now hopefully they wake up to it and they open up to some new ideas about it, which is always possible. And the next level keeps on giving us clues, and they even give them to us in waves, it seems like to me. And I think these drone things that are happening, it seems like it died down, and I don't know for a fact because I don't listen to the news that often. But I think Kathy took note of it, that it went off the cycle. The news cycle ended so that the mainstream wasn't covering it anymore much. They may still cover it as a little side story here and there, and some may cover it more than others. But that doesn't mean that things aren't still happening. And like the last live stream I did, I was talking about the big surprise, and that we might see thousands of spacecrafts coming in from different parts of the heavens, different parts of outer space, space aliens and next level, and coming like in shifts to harvest souls. So we don't know that when somebody dies, what happens to the soul that they had. But the space aliens, according to Tiendo, because I wouldn't think this way on my own, for sure. I wouldn't know where to start on this kind of thinking. They need souls. The space aliens are souls, and they need to increase their members because they want to increase their influence on humans. And they can do a lot, but they can do more if they can influence more humans. Humans in high places. Humans that have access to probably the funding and the ability to put that funding into developing technology that they can then use for multiple purposes and be with humans, and even take human bodies, the biological materials, to try to develop vehicles that they can train on their spacecrafts to do the tasks that they want them to do, the way that humans train their young to do things that they want them to grow to do, take over the family business or whatever it is. And it's the same kind of thing that's happening, and it's all a facsimile of what the next level does. It's a counterfeit of what the next level does, because the next level do all those things, but they don't do them by using lies and deceit. Like telling everybody that the world's going to end by global warming. When it may actually, maybe the sun will burn it up. But it'll be the sun that's burning it up, not human gases. you know, in my opinion, anyway. And according to, uh, um, actually, it's pretty scriptural as well to say that. You know, going by the Revelation 16, the sun heating up the planet. And we just had a bunch of really mighty sunstorms, but they weren't Earth facing. Which, when I saw the broadcast, it was kind of interesting to see that. That it was doing something else. Or it was hitting the Earth less directly, maybe, would be a way to look at it. I mean, I can come up with ways of looking at it, and they may be valid, but you notice that I say maybe, because I don't know, of course. I saw somebody predicting something with a time frame on it, and I knew right away that they didn't know what they were talking about. Now, somebody's going to prove me wrong, maybe, right? You know, they're going to say, "Oh, this is going to happen, and that's such a day," and then something's going to happen, and it might even be what they said. And to me, that would be because they had inside knowledge of it, or a spirit. Somehow they became a medium for certain spirits to where they could actually get a more accurate event that was going to happen, but it would still be an event that wasn't the next level's event. Unless the next level wanted to send humans, you know, a space alien soul to instigate something. But the space alien soul wouldn't know that that idea came from the next level because they don't believe the next level exists anymore. Or if they do, they pushed it down so much that, well, I guess I'm wrong about that, because I think that Doe said and T said at different times that Lucifer still recognized the chief exists, right? Kathy verified that. And that, you know, what they said about in that the space aliens, some of them are not really in line with everything that Lucifer is doing. And we might have seen evidence in that of being more than one space alien primarily in charge of what happens in the United States by this change in what looks to us as parties, right? Well, it's not necessarily parties, but it's you know, the change with Trump coming to power, you know, is seems to have, you know, and when Biden and Harris came into power, you know, it's really not them entirely. In fact, with the Biden-Harris, it was probably very little of them. But with Trump, I think it's more Trump. You know, he's more into things happening a certain way. But he's got his advisors too, and you know, anyway. So, but it seems to be evidence that there's different agendas, and I've heard this before from people that broke away from the CIA and stuff, and I think William Cooper might have talked about it some, and in his book Behold a Pale Horse, I think was the name of that. That there's, you know, I think Stephen Greer, I think, talked about that there were opposing views on how to handle things, and you know, in particular, you know, the whole space alien subject is one big area, but also the whole health department direction. You know, there's different ways of handling things. It's not just one way or the highway, and that's what was made for us to happen, you know, in 2019, 1920, and a few years thereafter, and even before that, where there were certain procedures that had to be followed for the birth of all children. That they had to receive a certain amount of medicines. And I remember when Trump was campaigning, he said that too many of those medicines were being given to children too early in life, all at the same time, and he felt like there should be a different schedule. And I remember thinking about that and thinking, wow, that's good to hear, because I knew that there was a value to thinking that way. I couldn't tell you exactly why, except by the study I had done about the side effects of those medicines that I still don't want to use the name of, and I've stayed away from so far. But not that there's not beneficial medicines of all kinds, in all kinds of ways of distributing them. That's from the next level, I believe, to even use that therapy. But it's the way it's done that I don't know that the next level has influenced them enough, except sometimes by recalls and things like that. But sometimes those things are forced on people, companies, because of what the feedback they get from all the lawsuits and things. And they found a way around that with the one subject of the one medicine that I've been alluding to here, to where they said that you can't sue them for doing a bad job when somebody gets damaged from those things. And of course, the mainstream media for years in this country were keeping people away from talking objectively about some of those medications, and they seem to be under fire now. And I think it's great, because if they want to do the right thing, to me that's great. If they want to try to improve their medicines so that there aren't so many side effects and they're not so grave, even if they have to remove them entirely, and agree on things that might not. Well, I mean, from my study, I know that some of the things they do is they're trying to stimulate the immune system to fight off certain viruses, right? And so they give you a certain amount of ingredients, and then they put in adjuvants to help stimulate the immune system. So they give you other things that the immune system's going to fight against. And that by giving you some of the virus in that, somehow, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it stimulates the body's immune system to also fight against that virus. And so that it's developing antibodies against all the things that it's fighting for. I guess there's different antibodies to different things that it fights against. So if they get carried away with certain things producing better numbers, then they start to justify, well, we can have a certain amount of these deaths from this, or a certain amount of these heart problems from this, because look at all the people that are benefiting. Yet they don't know for a fact that they're all benefiting entirely from what they're doing, because they don't know what the next level is doing, because the next level has laboratories, and they can introduce things into the human environment the way that they're working with the human environment in order to improve the immune systems of people and things like that. So it's an area to where the humans that get most in charge get full of themselves. So they think that this is the only way of the highway, and that other things they do to justify that, taking those shortcuts or not needing funding to study that better, or not waiting for trials to exist to where you can, maybe using animals and things like that, to run the trials through to see that you're not, going to be crippling people and whatever, and causing all kinds of cancers and things, autism or whatever, and they're not willing to, compromise because they think that it's doing so good for all these other people, and it may be doing some good to those other people. Maybe their immune systems are able to benefit from it, and so they get convinced, but then they think, that's part of the program. You got to take chances with these things. And same with nuclear energy, nuclear power, where Tiendo talked about, one of the power stations in Texas at the time wasn't getting approved because Tiendo felt like the environmentalists were holding it back, and that it was good that it was being held back because they didn't know what to do with the waste yet. So that the waste wouldn't be the very bad side effect to the humans. So the next level is working on all these social things that end up affecting us. And the space aliens are doing the same thing. And humans that have been doing the same thing with the mind, some of them, they're not all like working for the space aliens. They don't know that they're doing that. A lot of them are probably trying to do the best job they can to try to come up with medicines that can save people. I don't think they're doing it to make money for their companies. But they do want to keep their jobs and to keep their funding from the government to develop products. But they also can get so engrossed in their own direction that they don't see the handwriting on the wall. And we all are in that capacity all the time. But in terms of like the way that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been involved with the Children's Health Defense that I've been following for as long as it existed. And, he is having conversations with Trump, and they're bringing their expertise into that for all the doctors and the scientists that know about the technologies of, that are available in different kinds of medications, instead of putting everything in the basket of all or nothing, like with what happened in 2019, where they didn't even want people talking about using vitamin C for that disease that came up. And I would think that the reason why they didn't want to do that is because they wanted to have a clearer environment. For their the scientific environment thrives on being able to repeat the experiment. And so you want to narrow down the amount of things that can be variables to have that experiment. So, because you don't know when to change this variable or that variable. If you've got 2 different things that seem to be solving the problem, or 10 different things that are trying to solve the problem, you want to narrow it down to 1. Theoretically, I guess, in order to know if that 1 is doing the most work. But, there's a detriment to that. And that's where the whole idea of I could be wrong really is something that humans can all embrace. Of course, you got to pick your time and place. You don't want to tell your employer that you could be wrong about something that they're expecting you to be right about, unless you think they'd be open to it and not fire ass, but find a way to say it in a way that's you know, just your opinion, as just another way of looking at it. And there's ways of dealing with everything, I think, especially if we ask help from the highest source we can think of. And I think that will become tea and dough for more and more people. Because the next level doesn't waste what's here. Okay, let me go back to the chat. Because I need to get back to the 7 heads and the 10 horns of the dragon a little bit. But I really wanted to get into New Jerusalem a little bit too, since I put that in my title. So, so maybe I'll skip on to, well, I'll just finish that with thinking that the beast is the 7 heads and 10 horns, is talking about, in my opinion, the 7 heads are the G7, or at least at the time, can be thought of that way, which might be like the 7 continents or the 7 biggest superpowers, or, it might be related to that in a sense, that those 7 souls were like, are making their claims. And so there might be one that's pretty much trying to influence the governments of China and other places in that area. And then there's another one maybe with the Russians and that Soviet Union in that area. And another one in North America with the Americans, and you can just go through the G7. But that might not be accurate. It might not be the G7. It might be, other countries. But I think it is related to leaders of countries. But it doesn't really have to be exact, any of this. But the next level did use this kind of representation for a reason. But John didn't get it all right, so I have to always keep that in mind. That I can't get so sold on my interpretations that I say this means that, and this means that, and this means that, like as an absolute. It's just better to leave it open, because not just like trying to be like a false humility, but because I could be wrong. So take it with a grain of salt, if you want to take it at all. But at least the way that I'm talking about it can potentially be a way of thinking that when expressed to somebody else that is interested in that information, might give them a little bit different way of thinking about it. Because, to be honest with you, when I was writing my book, when I would get stumped, especially, I would go look up what the hundreds of, I didn't always look at hundreds, but I looked at probably 10 or 20 sometimes, because they would all be in the same spot in these certain websites that talk about the people that are interpreting everything. All the people in universities and whatever that, their function is in theology department, and so they write interpretations of every verse, the commentaries that talked about, I think, and they publish their commentaries. So I guess my book is like publishing my commentary. And that commentary can be updated. And I know the places where I wanted to update, but I'm not going to get into that now. But so the 7 heads of the beast, if that's the G7, then if that's like the leaders that get elected or whatever, or become dictators or whatever it is, then who are the 10? And I think, well, it sounds like the G10, because the G10 are actually the finance ministers. And they're the ones that pay for the wars. It's through the whole banking system that anybody has any money to do anything with. The governments don't have any money to do anything with unless it comes from through the banks and the Federal Reserve, of course, right? And so the ministers, they're the ones that pay the soldiers. You know, they're supposed to be regulated, of course, by the Congress and the two halls of Congress, but and that does, that happens. Although the way that money is given to people, whoa. And what they're telling us it's going for and what it's going for, you never know until you see things being done. And we don't see half the things that, or who knows, probably some tiny percentage of the things that we see coming from money. I mean, certain individuals in certain industries see a lot more than other people in those industries, of course, where money is going to. But if you're not in touch with them, if you don't follow Bloomberg and Wall Street Journal and mingle in those groups or whatever, there's a lot of things you're not going to know. So that's what I think. So I think that 7 heads and 10 horns relates to being 7 space aliens in charge of with 10 horned space aliens. Horns meaning the military leaders and the banking leaders. The Illuminati, I guess, would be part of that, right? Because that's what basically formed the biggest families, that had the most money, the billionaires class, if you want to put it that way. But I don't even know, maybe now it's getting to a trillionaire class when you tie in everything that's not liquid. But see, the things you don't know is that money alone doesn't necessarily buy you power. Things can shift. And I think that's because the next level's involved in this. If they wanted to allow a certain space alien group to have all the say, we probably wouldn't see a change in policy. So Vinny says that the crowns represent Lucifer's kingdom. Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Possibly in the next level. Well, Lucifer's kingdom isn't in the next level. The next level is referring to the kingdom level above human, that they're no longer humans. Lucifers are human equivalents because they thrive on themselves. And they thrive on how they can influence other people. But the next level members, the kingdom of God, the kingdom in the heavens, they don't thrive on who they control and who they influence. They thrive on doing jobs for their older member. And they don't influence their older members because their older members only do jobs for their older members. See, it's a beautiful system. It has no corruption in it. And they won't let you in if you're corrupted. If you're going to do things, like the ends justifies the means, no, the next level, the means is everything. Because they're operating on the moment. Each moment that they're working on something is a moment that ends up coming up with positives to the forward growth of others, even souls, of course. We're subject to discord and difficult things because then we can gain strength by asking the next level to help us and by putting into effect the ideas that we get to help us that humans have to, like humans have certain solutions to certain problems that are worth using, right? The process of reverse osmosis for water, I think, is a good development to get the water so that it's drinkable without giving you some kind of disease. And there's lots of examples of it. Different medicines that help people that have, problems with their brains and dealing with depression or, being suicidal and things, So if it can help you, self-medicating, if it can help you get past certain things, then, why not use them? Of course, there are side effects to everything, and learning to work with the correct dosage on things can be a lot, can be a positive direction. If you find certain substances that work for you in certain ways, but the next level, once you're in the next level classroom, you got to get rid of all of it, because you don't want to have any crutches, because you're going to be putting all your crutches to your older members. You're going to be asking them for how to get rid of all your crutches. And that's crutches in thinking too. And thinking about ourselves and, what we like, what we don't like. And that's all natural for the human kingdom. And they're not negatives or positives. They're opportunities for learning for ourselves what things work for us and what things don't. And judging for ourselves, if something's not working for us, how to change that part of it. And so that's what the classroom was all about, except it was all-encompassing. Notice that there were no couples. There were no, among the members, there were no marriages, there were no children to be brainwashed, or, there were no rebels. If there was a rebel, then they would be leaving, because they wouldn't be getting anything out of being with T and O, because it wasn't exciting in a way that there'd be something to rebel against. I don't know, that's probably not the best example of a rebel. There were no leaders. I mean, T and O were the leaders, but they didn't really like, they weren't thriving on that. And I can identify with that, because I don't like being a leader. I'm not a leader. I don't think of myself as a leader of anything. But I don't like taking the lead. But I can. Maybe I can. Sometimes I don't know if I can. No, I can. I mean, we have a perfect example, and Kathy and I have jobs, and sometimes we drive delivery of food and passengers sometimes, and I'm just as happy, not making any decisions. I sometimes do weigh in to decisions, but I ultimately don't care if I'm making decisions. But if I'm doing that same task and I'm not with somebody else, that may be better at making those decisions than I am. Sometimes Kathy is, I think, but sometimes I don't think she is necessarily. But she's the same way. We're both the same way in a lot of ways. We go with what's coming to us, because we get to accept rides and not accept rides, because of how far away they are and how much they're paying us. So that becomes a challenge every time you go out to work, to what to accept and what not to accept, so that you can get more money, of course, and less miles. And less headache as well from those miles, and wear and tear in the car and stuff. But I mean, when I'm by myself, I have to make the decisions, and I don't mind doing it. So it's not like I'm afraid to take the lead on a task. But I've seen a number of examples recently to where I was baffled by a direction to take, and I asked Kathy to put her head into it, and she did, and she came up with at least partial solutions, making some headway on the solutions. That and so that that's I think that's a good thing. That's the next level way of two people putting their heads together and coming up with a better answer than they would have individually. That's what was taught. That was the behavior of a member of the next level in their laboratories. And that's why we needed to learn how to accept those instructions as being the criteria, and those procedures as being the criteria for how we would think about things. And there are always things that challenged you that didn't seem to apply to the procedures. Or that you thought that the reason for the procedure, something might have changed in the evaluation of that. And so you go to your older member and you say, the experiment is coming out differently than we at first was, and we don't know why. But we keep on using the same amounts in the recipe, and then you find out that the next level looks at it, as then any human in a bakery would also look at it, especially one that was a chef that had experience with making bread, and they might say, oh, it's because the batch of flour now has more moisture in it, and so you need to weigh it differently before you use it for the bread. Or you need to fluff it up more, or we need to store it better. And so you get new procedures. And so the older members are working with the current environment, and they're doing that right now, all the time, all over the planet. I mean, I'm not saying every square inch at every moment. It's not like that. They have ways of keeping their finger on what's happening when it's important for them to do so. I don't think they need to know. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening that, that people get help with, and some people don't get help. And we don't know why. Some people can live through a horrendous crash like it just happened in, wasn't Indonesia, where was it? South Korea just had a horrible accident. 139 people died, I think. How many? 179, and they said that 2 survived. Now, I don't know if they're going to live through that survival. Kathy was wondering where on the plane they were, whether it was a safer spot or not. And, but, it's, we don't know why 2 survived. It might have been just coincidence. Who knows, right? But it could have been also help from the next level. It's possible. It's always possible. Because the next level do have members, even helping people with leaving their body. When the plant falls off the vine, when the leaf actually falls off the stem of a tree, the next level knows that there's a spirit that still exists. And they may have some automatic ways of dealing with those spirits, but they may also be helping those spirits adjust to being in the spirit world, depending on how things happened. You might be greeted by other spirits. Maybe that's the next level's way of, automatically having a way to usher that spirit into the spirit world. Your family members that you recognize because you've got that same program in your computer, in your genes, in your memory banks that goes with the end of the vehicle. Because there's a mind that is in development outside the vehicle, apart from the vehicle, when it just can't change when, once it's outside the vehicle. So it's gonna be the way it was. But we don't know that the next level can't take that mind and then put it into another vehicle. If they still had lessons to learn, so even those 179 people that died, those spirits might have been taken, and and the only way that somebody might identify it might be by saying, "Wow, that person changed." Or when that spirit started influencing another human vehicle, and the person all of a sudden got a new awareness about something, and they did a change in their life of some sort, and the people around them would say, "That's not the person I used to know." And Doug gave the example. He used that example in session 11, I think, that we just listened to from the Beyond Human series. By the way, that is available on Vimeo. Under Heaven's Gate on Vimeo, which was the site was provided by Mark and Sarah. Okay, let's see what else is here. So the crowns, I want to go back to that for a second. Back to the Revelation 12:3. That should be on your screen now. That crown there is diadema. That's not the same crown that is talked about that members of the next level gain. I don't know if you're still hanging in here, the person that wrote that comment. It's a blue banded marked with white, which Persian kings used to bind on the turban of a tiara. The kingly ornament for the head, the crown. See, so this is an example of some of the problems with some of the scriptures when they use one word to describe two completely different conditions. Because this is talking about Persian kings. Those are humans we're talking about. Even if they're influenced by space alien souls, they're still in human vehicles. And the space alien souls are still human equivalents, even though they have more technology than most humans do. And they can pretend, and they can put thoughts in our heads because they know how to transmit those thoughts, and that certain individuals will receive those thoughts as good ideas and things to do things with, and so they can manipulate people by that method. So that's the kind of crown that we're talking about. That's talked about in Revelation 12:3 that the dragon has, or not the dragon, but let me see, where did it say that? Right, it said, "And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads." So that's the part where I'm saying that this is showing that those crowns, being diadems, are kings. They're like kingdoms, probably even related to some of the things that Daniel was talking about. Anyway, and you get further understanding about that to where I think their crowns are thrown down, maybe. No, the ones that throw down their crowns, that's a different crown. I'll look it up here quickly. Oh, I don't want to really see it there. Oh gosh, okay. I guess I can expand this temporarily. I know you don't know what I'm talking about out there. Bear with me a second here. I can always put it back. I wanted to go to the Revelation, right? Yeah. Let's look at what Revelation 12:1 says. To the word crown. I should have saw that right there. It was right in front of me. Which is talking about the woman has this crown. And that's the word Stephanos, which means crown. I know because my mother of this vehicle gave me that name. My legal name is Stephen. And I don't know if she knew the meaning of that word. I don't. I think she told me, but then she seemed to forget about it when she got dementia. Of course, that's what happens, right? But she told me that I was named after Saint Stephen's in Vienna because her mother was from Vienna. Anyway, so it's a crown. It's a mark or royal or in general exalted rank, the wealth of blessedness which will be given as a prize to the genuine servants of God and Christ, the crown, the wreath, which is the reward of the righteousness, that which is an ornament and honor to one. So it's got a mixture there, right? Looking like it could also apply to a mark of royalty, but it oh, okay, actually the original, let's see, apparently the word Stephanos in Greek is apparently primary stepho, which means to twine or wreath. To twine or wreath. And so I think what that's actually describing is that somebody has twined themselves with their older member's mind, like a binding. They've bound themselves to their older member. I'm not saying that I'm that way. You know, maybe to some degree, yes, I think somewhat, because I believe in my older member and who he is. So, but I don't ever assume, you know, what kind of binding I have. But that's the way I'm thinking about it now. Anyway, I'm just talking about the way that these terms are used. And this was referring to the verse that starts with, "And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars." Well, I believe Doe said that that woman was talking about tea, which he gave the interpretation of the same time he gave the one that's about the dragon. One time he talked about it that I was aware of. And I've talked about this whole verse many times, and so I'm not going to go through it all, but the moon under her feet, I believe, is talking about the lesser light. She's described as being clothed with the sun. So she's clothed with the greater light, okay? And the lesser light of the moon is under her feet, which means that it's the footstool, that he is her footstool, that is given to the students to climb up on. That's what a footstool does, helps you raise yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Yeah, so every student has to climb up the footstool. And that's by making like Jesus the way. I am the way, the truth, and the light, the life. In other words, through me, through becoming me, my behaviors and ways, and in relationship to an older member, the way that Jesus was in relationship with his older member, who he termed as a father at that time. But in this case, that same older member was here, and now they were using the more accurate terminology of older member. So T then, in that context, becomes a new student's older member, or grandfather, if you want to look at it in those 2,000 year ago terminology, which I think there's a benefit to using that terminology simultaneously, because a lot of us have that program in our heads, and we just need to but that program, those terms, if we're attached to those terms, then we've got to overcome that attachment to those terms, because the religious terms, in the record books aren't as accurate. And that's why atheism is a good step away from religion, because you start to deal with more generic terminology, which older member would be a more generic terminology for an older member of the next level, as opposed to an older member of, which a mother could be an older member in the human kingdom as well, in terms of humanness, equally so. Anyway, but you'll note that while I'm over here in Revelation 12, that they describe that the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be which the child was ready to be delivered, to try to devour that child as soon as it is born. Now, it's not being born, it's being born to the throne, you'll see later. And he's going to rule all nations with a rod of iron. In other words, there's going to be a strict standard that people were going to have to meet if they were going to become one of his children. And you can see that strict standard is very, very strong, because this is not an easy task. It's not a country club belief system. When you're in that graduation classroom, you've got to show that you, as far as you're concerned, you're 100% in. And you're not going to just say it. Say it doesn't cut it that much. In fact, Kathy and I have re-listened to tapes that I was sitting there for, to where, they were challenging us to put our money where our mouth is. That means that when you have a problem, when you have a difficulty, you switch the gears as quickly as possible. And once you learn how to switch the gears and stop that program from playing out, let's say it's an angry response, okay, to somebody else. You're going to punch somebody in the face. Well, you got to stop it, so before it even gets to that point.
Personally, I'm going to run him off the road.
Right, but you don't do it. You want to run them off the road because they're being such a driving jerk, but they may be having a bad day, right? So you don't want to run them off the road. But, some people might do it because of that, and you call it road rage, right? And then you have an incident where there's a road rage and somebody pulls out a gun and shoots somebody else. So that behavior needs to be nipped in the bud, is the terminology that T and Do gave us, what they used to describe it, so that you don't even get to that point to where that anger wells up in you to where you stop it. Now, it's easily said, but it's not easily done. And we all have buttons that can be pushed in different ways. And one form of button isn't necessarily better than the other form of button, unless the button means that you can actually hurt somebody, and then that's definitely a lesser button that you don't want to push. Maybe. I don't know. So Finchshaw said, there is so much more understanding needed before the next level. That's how I keep going in times of distress, just like Doe said. Yes, great. That sounds great to me, Finch. Keep at it. I think is you'll get more and more from it. The more and more you put into motion, the more and more you become aware of and receptive to and understanding of, and makes more sense. And yes, it's going to still be challenging because that's the nature of growth, that it's continuous. But you'll also get to plateaus to where certain things don't bother you anymore. You're not challenged by certain things anymore. Hello, Rise Above. Vinny Dutra says the crowns represent Lucifer's kingdom. Oh, I already addressed that one. Shanana says, I liked Shanana when I grew up with them. My vehicle I'm talking about. Shanana's strongest soldier. If Tiendo and all the others have left on the comet, what is to happen to you and the rest of us? We're going to get burned up. I'm only joking. No, I'm being silly. Maybe I shouldn't be. But they didn't actually necessarily go on the comet. It didn't. The comet was the marker, is what they said. They put it on their website. You can read it on the website that says it's irrelevant. Well, they were talking about the companion object that was sighted and photographed by different people that was thought to be with the comet. And there's some evidence that that was actually true. But it didn't matter to them whether there was a companion object with the comet. They felt like the comet was the marker, which in other words, that identified their departure date, their timing of departure. They had been preparing for that departure for years. That very departure, because I left when they were actually talking about the exact method they used. And that was 1990, September of 1994. So I just want to, for the record, I just want, not that it's that important, whether to think of them as leaving on a comet. Who knows what the comet really is, right? It had two nucleuses that were in orbit around one another inside the nucleus, the way that Pluto and Charon are orbiting one another. And there's, I think, another planet that's orbiting one another that way with a moon. But, so what happens to me and the rest of us? Well, I am the rest of us. I'm the same as everybody else in the sense that the next level determines which souls are still demonstrating growing and which aren't. And they put those souls in storage, in buckets, in whatever their storage medium is. Because we're talking about physical, plasma-like souls that are objects that have information in them, have programs, have knowledge, have genetic part of their genetic identity, the part of the genetic identity that recognizes the reality of the next level above human, the kingdom of God, the kingdom in the heavens, and whatever religious terms one uses for that otherworldly condition with the creators of this planet. And the life forms on it. That even allows for the space aliens to influence and grow crops within, crops of humans. Which when they were doing, when Lucifer and those fallen angels left their employ and their service to the next level by breaking instructions, the next level didn't allow them access to the same tasks that they had before. And according to Genesis 6, which I think is got a good general view of it, and the book of Enoch talks about it also, that right after that, according to the timeline being talked about there, I'm not saying that's all accurate. I'm saying there appears to be some accuracy to some of that. That as soon as they fell away from operating on behalf of their older members in the next level, God and God's minions, if you want to look at it that way, or not minions, that would be a more derogatory term. God and God's angels, you can look at it that way if you want to use that terminology. But you're really talking about older members and the older members' crews of younger member who have overcome the human kingdom to a degree to where they got assigned elementary next level tasks or more significant next level tasks, depending on their growth. So that's what in store for us is storage, elementary tasks, more significant tasks. Now I don't know where I am in that. I might be stored, or maybe not. Maybe I've got enough chances to where there's some kind of distortion in my head that's not recoverable. Maybe there's no soul associated with this vehicle, except for the soul that was deposited into this vehicle. So maybe it's a next level, a beginner soul. I don't know. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, really. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. Not at all. Because we don't get anything from knowing we're on the list of being saved for a future opportunity. We get from what we give to the next level. And the only way we really want to give to the real next level is when we don't care about ourselves. And we trust that the next level is going to take care of us, and we try to live our lives wanting in some capacity to please our older members, wanting to be of service, wanting to give to others so that others have the chance to grow to their greatest capacity to receive what is actually provided to everybody as an inheritance. I was talking about that in session 11 of the Beyond Human series that Kathy and I listened to today. And he was talking about how they're receiving the inheritance that was for them, that was for the students of T and Do, that was for Do also. Do is getting the inheritance of doing a task for T. What does that mean to Do? Do didn't try to pretend that he knew what would happen in his tasks after he left this task. He didn't pretend to think that he did the task as well as could be done. So he didn't know whether he'd have to do the task again, or if the next level would just want him to do the task again, or if another student would end up doing that task that he had again, and he might be the older member, the older member's older member in that task, like the way that T was Doe's older member. And then now each of the students are also going to get, and you can see this is talked about a little bit in Junodi's document in the Heaven's Gate book on the Heaven's Gate website. That's called, I keep referring to it a lot because it's got a lot of little things in it that say a lot. And it's the document is undercover. No, jeez, I just lost it. Wow, I got every different document in my head except for that one. Do you remember it, babe?
What were you referring to?
Do you know his document in the Heaven's Gate book that I always refer to? I even refer to it this time. It just went out of my head.
Space.
Away team from deep space surfaces before departure. Thank you. With a full mouth of crackers. So away team from deep space surfaces before departure. That document talks about how there are different stratas of vehicles. No, different stratas of next level grown vehicles. Because the next level grows dense physical vehicles that are not made out of the same materials that human vehicles are made from, or grown from, that they grow like on a vine, like a plant, to maturity that has a certain amount of functions, just the way that human vehicles have a certain amount of functions. We can walk, we can generally run, we can, a lot of mammalian vehicles have those same functions, right? But humans also have functions of the brain that animals don't seem to have. Or they would probably have a better way of describing those functions than they do by, that humans would understand, because humans appear to be more evolutionarily above the animal kingdom. So the same thing happens with vehicles made and grown for graduate souls into the next level. They get different vehicles according to what they have grown into being able to do, because it takes a different strength of mind. It's like having a different amperage to run an air conditioner than you have for even a fan. Because you've got to run the condenser and the compressor in addition. So it's like having a stronger mind, a stronger power source for doing things like disappearing and appearing with the same vehicle. Putting out a certain vibe that a human vehicle's eye wouldn't be able to see, but you'd still be physical in front of you. That might be one example of a technology within the new vehicle. Now, I'm not saying that anybody now is going to graduate, but that could be an elementary technology for a next level vehicle. And so maybe all the members that graduated, or most of them, maybe that graduated in 1997, might have received a vehicle that had the capacity to change its vibrations so that a human wouldn't be able to see them if they were doing a human task in the human kingdom to where they didn't want to be seen. But another graduate might be able to actually be a spacecraft, be a biological spacecraft. And so, for all intents and purposes, just to describe that, this is my opinion on how to describe it. You could think that, let's say you had a car and you went into the car and it had an automatic driver. All you had to do is put in the destination and it would take you there and you wouldn't have to do anything. You could focus on other things the whole time on the way there. And you would get there because there would be a soul that had that task to do that and many, many things. Because perhaps those souls that were given that spacecraft to operate as a crew had certain tasks that they were going to do to, let's say, observe humans. And that was their task. The task wasn't to drive to the location of the observation. Which I think might be the reason why I think that being an observer, a watcher, according to the Book of Enoch, might have been the type of elementary task that the ones that fell away, talked about in Genesis 6 and by Enoch, had before they broke away from looking to their older member for solutions to problems and instructions on what to do and what not to do and things like that. Because the next level, they don't play around. So if there's something that they don't want you to do, they'll give you the instruction not to do it. Or it'll be against their principles. They're not going to give you an instruction to go to the human kingdom and, well, I shouldn't say what they would do and what they wouldn't do. So I'm going to just cut that off right away. Well, I could be wrong, but I guess we'll see where I was going with that is maybe the way to describe it is that we don't know that the next level doesn't instigate wars in the human kingdom. If they're working with the plants in the human kingdom and the plants have been so underdeveloped that they want to kill each other, the next level knows how to take advantage of that, okay, for the other plants that are still growing around those individuals, and even for those individuals that become the soldiers. They can all learn lessons from that, even though the next level doesn't want that behavior. So the next level isn't for peace on Earth in that way, but they want people to act peacefully towards one another. And so they wouldn't give you instructions to harm your vehicle or harm other people's vehicles or manipulate somebody. So they just wouldn't do that. So if you felt like you asked God for this direction or that direction, and you felt like you got back that you needed to go to war to fight, for that freedom or for that against those terrorists, well, I don't think that would be coming from the next level, but that doesn't mean that that can't become a lesson for that person who does that to learn from experiencing. Okay, so Joseph Coates says, do you ever miss your classmates? T and Do Sawyer. I've said this to documentaries. I've been quoted, I think sometimes, that I don't really miss them. I know that sounds terrible. Do you love them? Well, I love them. I know that my humanness doesn't love them. because the humanness is of the vehicle. So, who are we? When I say I, we're a composite of three different sources of mind. And one source is our genetic programming. And another source is what we grow up with, our environment, our parentage, or our caregivers, or if we were adopted, or whatever the circumstances were. And then growing up in society is also part of that mind. What we accept and what we don't accept, what we believe in, what we don't believe in, what we do, what we don't do. And that all becomes what shapes the word I when it forms in our heads, according to what's being talked about at the time. Whether which parts of that mind are going to come to the fore as the I. Okay? And then the third type of mind that we are probably all comprised of, at least with minds that are somewhat operating in a healthy enough way, which can be all different types probably, of thinking. Even somebody that doesn't have command of the language and can't speak in an intellectual way can, I think, still have some lessons. It's not going to maybe be the full brunt of lessons that can come, but then that spirit will get additional lesson opportunities if it's growing in a healthy direction. But anyway, so nobody's left out, really, except we leave ourselves out. Because the third form of mind is when we take charge of the vehicle. When we tell the vehicle, well, vehicle, you're not going to have that cookie. Because I don't want you to have it right now. Or I don't want you to have it, that kind of cookie, whatever it is.
Or I'm only going to eat for 6-hour period of the day.
Yeah, I'm only going to eat for 6 hours during the day. I'm going to try that because I want to.
6 hours of a 24-hour.
6 hours in a 24-hour period. There's a type of, that means that person's fasting for, 18 hours.
That's right.
Even though it might not be a complete fast if you're drinking liquids, that protein powder and stuff, which I think is a good thing to do, so that you're not fasting for that long, and we certainly need a lot of water. Also, you can fast on no food for a period of time, but you need to have water. Maybe you can fast without water for a period of time, but I think you're going to die pretty soon if you do that for too long. Because you're going to shut down all your systems so they can't recoup. I heard somebody recently, in fact, Casey told me about somebody that was a vegan fruitarian or something like that, and they recently died. I showed a picture of the person, and she was so thin. Wow, it was like emaciated looking. I don't think that's healthy. The organs can shut down. And I've studied fasting, and I fasted, so I know that there are physical effects to it that can be positive and can be negative. You can't fast too fast. That's funny, right? Because especially if you have weight on your body. Everybody's got some weight on their body, right? But so maybe there isn't any especially to it. When we have weight on our body, it's natural to have that. It's insulating of the body, right? It helps us stay warm and stuff. And but when you're not eating, then my understanding is that the body pulls from the fat cells for energy. And so if you've had a diet that had a lot of toxins in it, then those toxins are going to go into your brain. And they can also trigger responses to that. Uh, and T and Do, I know we're talking about this, but mostly Do, when Do started to really study diet and nutrition after T left, even though T started us in that direction while T was here, um, we found out that like we started with an apple juice fast. And so for 3 days, all we did was drink apple juice and as much water as we wanted. And we were taking like Naturalax in order to stay regular, because that's important during a fast. And it felt kind of terrible the first day or two. Like cloudy vision, cloudy thoughts, and just not clear, not like caffeine helps you with, right? For me, it helps, that has that effect. I can be very dull in my observation of things when I get up in the morning. But if I take my caffeine fix, I seem to be more alert. I see more. I'm a little more attentive to my environment, especially when I'm driving. I think it's important for that. We know the same thing happens if you've been driving for a long time and you're tired. It's like your nutrition's low and you're tired from all the eye strain and stuff. You're more prone to making mistakes. So anyway, so you can have too many toxins coming into your system too fast if you fast too hard. And so if you fast in a more gradual way, I think you can kind of mitigate the backlag that happens, the poor effects that we get from fasting. So that can be, I think, a successful way of changing our patterns and even reducing weight. Chris Coos says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. In spending a decent amount of time looking at the Heaven's Gate experience, I have come across no evidence for any claim made by the founders. Well, that's okay. Yeah, I understand that. But you're gonna have to, since you're bringing this up, I have to deal with. I can only deal with specifics. And you're saying there's no evidence for any of the claims. So I guess we need to start with a claim. And if you give me a claim that they made, and I'll try to talk to it, and maybe there won't be any evidence that I can provide, but maybe I can provide some evidence to that claim. I know I've been asked a lot of questions, and when someone else tells me that they don't see any evidence, if they give me something specific, I try to bring up examples from my life in the classroom and examples from what they were saying in audio tapes that can be verified of things that came true. Now, some things that came true became evidence for me, right? But they only became evidence for me after I left the classroom, when I saw that what they were telling me worked or didn't work or worked against me in what I wanted to achieve. Okay? And when I saw that what they gave us to do worked, like for instance, I'll give you an example. I learned that I could be more successful keeping a celibate mind and body if I employed, like one lesson was like when you're going to work, you're driving in your car. I mean, this wasn't the lesson, but this is an example of how things get triggered in your head. So I'd been celibate for many years, and I didn't think I was entertaining anything to stimulate that behavior. But I was, and I didn't realize it. And I've talked about it before, but I'm not going to go to those examples. But I'm going to go to an example of I'd be driving to work, and I would see what my vehicle identified as a female vehicle walking on the side of the road, going to wherever they were going. And they could even be wearing an overcoat, so that I didn't see anything that was like stimulating of any thoughts. But I recognized that my vehicle was having a response to the fact that that was a female vehicle. And I automatically would, at first when that happened, because it happened a number of times on the same road, in the same, going to my job, because my job was on the same direction from where I was living. And so I recognized that I could play that thought out in my head, or I could let that thought, I could break that thought off at the first observation of somebody being. And I got to the point to where I could be driving to work, and I knew I could turn my head to look at somebody walking on the side of the road, and I stopped myself from doing it. Because then I wasn't going to be subject to being triggered by what I see. Now, it doesn't mean that what I see is going to, be some like porn thing or, something like that, or even be related to sensuality or sexuality. Okay? But I learned that I could do that. I could stop that thought before it even forms. Like T would talk about, one time I heard her say that she could smell an influence or a certain way of thinking. She sensed it and knew that it wasn't something that she wanted. And so she broke it off. Now, you can see the same kind of example, like with alcoholism or drug use or a sexual addiction or addiction to ourselves and our own intellect, to where we think we really respect our own opinions about things, and for whatever reasons, and I'm not saying that there's not reasons for that are good reasons, but we can over respect our opinions about things. We can get arrogant with ourselves and what we know and what we've learned and what we think is the way of evaluating something, and can all be part of that. And so just one example was I know that I can control my thoughts, which I didn't know that before that, because I hadn't been subject to thinking about anything as an addiction. I wasn't prone to using different substances to achieve. I was using marijuana sometimes before I joined the classroom, and it was, but it wasn't every day, all day long, or So I didn't think of it as like an addiction, even though there was a certain degree of addiction to it. That I would go to it, when I wasn't feeling great, or just even because I wanted to have the high from it. I didn't have to even have a reason necessarily that was discernible in my head, but I just didn't have that much experience with certain things. But then the other things I did have experience with, like for instance, I didn't need to be told that going to fight a war in Vietnam was not something I wanted to do. I didn't need to see evidence of people dying over there, in front of me to know that that was happening. I mean, I don't have to see evidence that that people went to the moon. even though there's people that say that that didn't happen, you know, it was all studio. I think some of it might have been a studio, whatever. But so I mean, there's a lot of things that one person can feel as evidence, another person doesn't feel as evidence. So that's about all I'm going to say about that right now. If you have something specific, bring it up to me or put it in the comments. And even a number of things. If you've got a whole list of things, then I want to know. I can continue to talk for 3 hours about that. But I want to actually end the stream. So, Chris Cruz says that a spaceship was the form of transportation to the next level. Okay. Well, I guess the first time I heard that, I thought to myself, okay, that makes sense to me that that's possible. I mean, actually, it made sense to me that it was. But you know, we're all, nobody's the same and nobody's better than somebody else and all that baloney for what they understand. It's what we do and what we grow towards. And that becomes the common sense. Because I could be wrong. Because the way I'm thinking about spaceship, or the way that you're thinking about spaceship, I don't know exactly what you're thinking. If you're thinking that it's, well, to me it could be, the next level can have all different kinds of transportation. But the idea that they have physical bodies, that's probably the hard part with that, right? I might be wrong. Because if you're thinking about transportation to the next level, if you're thinking about the next level the way that I'm using it as being the kingdom of God, the kingdom in the heavens, in the religious terminology, then you would think, why would you need a spaceship if that next level is a spiritual level, if it's a condition of the mind, or if it's invisible beings of some sort that are invisible physically, that don't have physicality to them. I guess I'm not sure what to say that could be evidence that that claim was true. Except one idea comes to my mind that I don't know if it's from Doe's mind or not. I'll keep it in mind, though, that as I listen to tapes and think about things, to try to come up with better examples of that would be evidence. But I think, you know, I don't like to go to Scripture, but I don't know if you believe that Jesus took a physical body with him into that cloud. That would be one form of evidence by that report. Whether he did or didn't. I just, well, you know, if that's something that makes sense to you, then Jesus would be the evidence that a physical body went into a clouded area above the earth by the reports of the eyewitnesses, according to that. So, it says bedtime for Chris, so thanks for trying. I'm glad that you survived. But also, the humans can go on spacecrafts into the heavens, into the outer space areas. And if humans can do it, and their technology is so primitive compared to what's been reported from the next level, that's even coming to us through space aliens, the whole space alien idea is also evidence. And I could probably continue on this line for a while, but I don't know if you really want to hear about it, so I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you have a good rest. Mr. Sword Killer says, oh, I see. I didn't. Oh, yeah, okay. Sorority, so to speak, he was hyperactive. He was always running to do something and stuff like that. Do you think that if he continued with that behavior, the next level would accept him? Well, I'm not the one that makes those kind of choices, okay? But he didn't continue with that behavior. So, but I think if he continued that with that behavior and then got instructions to know otherwise, he would have learned to stop that behavior, and he did. He got control of that. It doesn't mean he got 100% control of it. I mean, as far as like the way that his brain would operate very quickly, that was probably harder to do. But to stop your vehicle from doing something, that's not as hard to do, I don't think. But maybe for him it was, so I can't judge that either. We don't know how much effort it took for him to have that control. And the same with other people about other things. We never know what somebody else is dealing with. So we really shouldn't be judging other people by anything but except for the actions that they actually take. And we're still not judging the person. We're judging the behavior. And if we need to keep them away from society so they don't hurt people because that's their behavior, well then I think it's, we have to do that kind of thing and try to do that in the right way. That I don't think really is done that much in the human kingdom in the right way. But some of it, can be, even Lucifer wants to have law and order in his kingdom of the earth, that he's operating for the most part, even though the next level is really allowing him to do the things that he does that have even become normal for humans. So that we have choices. That's why the next level allows it to happen. No, I don't think you're disrespecting sorority by saying that, Mr. Sword Killer. Not at all. I think sorority would be, happy to talk about what he experienced in overcoming that. I think he did overcome it. I mean, I saw that he overcame it because that was happening like in campgrounds in the first 5 years. And not even all the time. It wasn't all the time. It wasn't like everywhere he went he was running. I was just using that example, which was appropriate, actually, that he wanted to do his older member's task as quickly as possible. That was the next level way. But he was just putting it into effect in a way that the next level would have didn't feel was necessary unless there was an emergency. If it was an emergency and the tent was falling down, yeah, run over to that tent as fast as you can to try to keep the tent up from blowing down in the wind. Because then you can secure it and maybe get through the night. But, or if there's a fire somewhere, you need to run. So it wasn't like running was bad. It was just that because of that, we got an instruction to, just walk as fast as you can and walk at a good pace. And some of the other students got a test from sorority because they didn't feel to run. I didn't think to run, but I saw sorority running sometimes and I thought, all right. I didn't think badly of him, really. I don't think for it. I just didn't know. See, I didn't put as much importance on. I think I did run up to the trailer when we were in campgrounds, up to the window, but not like as fast as I could. Because I think, part of me told me that that wasn't the routine. Nobody else was doing that either. So I was influenced by others in the class, except for sorority. And the way I thought about it was, well, that's just sorority. He's really, he's got some hyperactivity, right? But some others were challenged by it. And then they got corrected. Hello, RVW. Yeah, I'm not really the teacher. But yes, I am trying to represent T and Do at this moment as much as I can think to pass on what I believe were their teachings. And so that does put me in a degree of a teacher role. But I just want to distinguish that all the time, that we all have the same teacher, in my opinion, if we want that teacher. And that teacher's name for us is Do, and T. T is also our teacher, but is also our teacher's teacher. I know that word is used in a lot of ways, of course, in the human kingdom, and it's I take it as you're being respectful of me, and I appreciate that. Well, folks, I think I've said all about things that I really didn't talk about New Jerusalem. Okay. I'll talk about one thing and then I'll talk about it again. Another time. But I'll go back to Revelation 3:12. I'm going to read this. The context of this appears to be the same soul that was Jesus, his mind, that soul's mind being expressed through the messenger that went to John, according to the way that John described it, went to the student that had the name of John, that appears to be the same John that was in the Gospel of John. Okay, anyway, with that preference, it said that to him that overcomes, this individual will make a pillar in the temple of his God. In other words, make that individual part of the foundation, part of the structure of the classroom. That is the laboratory experiment being monitored by a spacecraft from the next level, from the evolutionary level above human. Okay, and he's talking about a temple of my God. That word God in that context is theos, so it's deities. It's every member of the next level, every older member of the next level, but even a younger member of the next level can serve in that capacity, representing their older member to humans, because humans are in a different evolutionary kingdom, and the gap is as different as between a member of the animal kingdom that's domesticated and a member of the human kingdom that's the gap between the human kingdom and the next level kingdom. Both physical kingdoms, but have different sets of rules and behaviors and ways. That stand out. Anyway, and okay, and then it says, and this individual will write upon the individual that is overcoming the name of my God. The name of my God. And that name word is his name, named or called or surname in the 200 times that it's used. So you're talking about actually a identification in terminology. You know, Ruth, Peter. You know, it's a real name of some sort. The name of my God. So he's naming the one that is his older member. The name of his deity. The older member that brought him into the next level. His father. Jehovah. Elohim for Adam. Jehovah for Moses. I think Jehovah for Elijah. And the Heavenly Father from in Jesus terminology. And in the updated terminology, T to Do. The older member to Do. And you'll write upon him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God. The name of the city of my God. Now that word city is referring to a location, a geographic location where there are people building and living and all that. Okay? So you're talking about a geographical area where humans live. So now, we know in the past that the word Jerusalem is actually defined to some degree as city of God, city of God's angels. And you got Los Angeles as, which means city of angels. And all angels aren't the same angels. You've got the city of God's angels, you've got the city of Lucifer's angels, which talks about in Revelation 12 a little more directly. And Tiendo talked about it in more direct ways as those working for the lower forces and know it or not, and those working for the next level know it or not, I guess. But mostly know it. And the name of the city of my God. And then he says, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem. The word new is used as new 44 times. Recently made, fresh, recent, unused, unworn. So it's not talking about the old Jerusalem. And then it's described as which cometh down out of heaven from my God. So you don't see that very often, talking about something coming from heaven, an object coming from heaven. It is in the Revelations a number of places. Okay? And in the Revelation, it talks about describing that as an object that's hovering above the mountain tops. And that it's got a crystal floor. And they don't need any generators of light because it has its own light to see with. And that it's got foundation, it's got structure, it's got physicality. It's talked about being made with gemstones. That could be like crystals and things, you know, who knows what, right? So which cometh down out of heaven. So talking about a next level spacecraft that actually comes down from heaven and is the laboratory that's working with that geographical location. This is my interpretation of this I'm talking about. And that he will, and then the last thing he says in this verse is, and I will write upon him, that new overcomer, or that old overcomer, I guess it doesn't have to be new. I will write upon him. Oh. Okay. My new name. So I should see if I'm still working. Oh, I didn't. I took this away. That's all that happened. There it is. Thanks. What happened to that? Oh my gosh, the free Bible just became... Oh wow. My distortion of my Bible software just got clogged. There it is. I don't know if you can see that. It's weird looking. Oh, okay. I can just go right back to that. So now I'm back to it with a new version. Hopefully that comes through. But so I just wanted, that last thing I said, I wanted to talk about that just a minute. And that is, so the New Jerusalem, and then he will write upon that student his new name. Now the writing part, no entry for write. Sometimes the software has got some problems with it. It's old. We should find a better one. Huh. Well, that's weird. I'm going to have to go look that up in another Bible translation software to see if what words were inserted into there. But it says that and something about a new name. I mean, it says that it will write upon him my new name. In other words, his new name. In other words, this individual, this soul, older member from the next level, who was in the vehicle named Jesus, was going to have a new name when he came back. And that means he's also going to have a new vehicle, which there's a lot of evidence of that. I'm not going to go into all that right now because it would take me too long, and I'm ready for the end of my night. So the New Jerusalem part, I will go to one spot in Revelation 11. That talks about where the two witnesses come to. Describes it. I've done this before. It talks about where the two witnesses lose their vehicles. Okay? It says that their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which symbolically which some Bible software doesn't, it's called pneuma attikos in the Greek. And in some of the Greek, in one Greek dictionary, it says symbolic in place of the word spiritual, which symbolically is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Okay, so right away when you're talking about crucifixion, you know you're talking about what Jesus experienced, what the older member experienced when he was in a vehicle named Jesus. And where that location, I think that was where. Yeah, wheresoever is also good. Whereas, but it's symbolic. Symbolically where he was put to death, and that was Jerusalem. And it just so happens that Doe and crew left from south of Los Angeles, right? And they first began their public task in North Hollywood of part of Los Angeles. I don't think that's accidental. And that the word Sodom, which is described as being like Sodom, actually the definition of Sodom in the Greek is burning. You know, burning tree, burning area, a city destroyed by the Lord raining fire and brimstone on. Okay, metaphorically, it's actually considered to be Jerusalem by this one Bible software. Sodoma. And Egypt is from the Greek word ahiguptos, which they say in this translation is of uncertain derivation. But it's a noun, and it's actually, they say that it means double straits, a country occupied in the northeast angle of Africa. But remember, this is symbolically, right? So you're talking about a country. Metaphorically, it's talking about Jerusalem again here, according to the translators of this. For the Jews persecuting the Christ and his followers, and so to be likened to the Egyptians treating the Jews. Oh, I see. That's the way they're saying that. Okay. But I thought the double straits was interesting, and I kind of wondered if that had to do with like the two raptures. Well, I'm not going to get into that now, except where Doe seemed to think that it had to do with two groups of people leaving their world behind, the human world behind, to become members of the next level by joining the classroom, which happened in 1975-6 and then happened in the 1990s, 3 and 4, and thereafter a little bit, up till 7 actually, or no, 6. When Devotee joined in 1996, 6 months before they left. So I just wanted to show this because this is related to the two witnesses and their crew. If you looked at other places in before and after the two witnesses they talked about the believers. So the dead bodies doesn't mean dead bodies. They inserted that in there because they used the word kill to mean that they were killed when it didn't mean that they were being killed. It was from the word apokataino, which has to do with, in Revelation 11:7, is to kill in any way whatsoever, to destroy, to allow to perish, metaphorically to extinguish, to abolish, to inflict mortal death, to deprive of spiritual life and procure eternal misery in hell. So that's the kind of ways that it was translated as slay also, 14 times as slay, and put to death. And in the context of that, by the way, is very important to this, in my opinion. Not that it meant anything to T and Do, because they didn't go through any of this at all that I'm aware of. But it says that it's that they would and kill them. So if you look at that, this beast out of the bottomless pit was going to kill them. It actually says that the word them could be himself, herself, themselves. Themselves is a primary definition for the word autos in the Greek. But all of them talk about themselves. So it's kill himself, kill herself, kill themselves. That's the context of the way that this is used in Revelation 11:7. And destroy themselves, but and their self at that point were their vehicles. So that was, it did not mean that they could leave in a different way or sooner or whatever. I'm not going to get into all that because we don't know that John got this exactly right and that it had to go a certain way. Because the next level, they know how to give enough of a generalization that can apply to a lot of different, or a number of different events, experiences. But they were killing themselves in the context, even on a spiritual level, even on a mental way of thinking. Because you don't become if you want to do yourself what you want to do, then that's fine. And in the human kingdom especially, that's fine, right? But if you're wanting to work for the next level, then it's about working for the next level with yourself. So yourself doesn't want to do anything else but work for your older member. And so what your older member gives you to eat, if there's something to eat is necessary, that's what you want. If your older member gives you clothing to wear to do a task on the earth, even if you're doing it directly for your older member on a spacecraft, that's the uniform you want to wear. And they will give you tasks on how to do all those things. You'd go to storage or to the warehouse where they would have clothing that you would wear if you were going to do a task on the planet with your next level body, and you wanted to appear to humans as normal in that task, whatever that task is. So that's just an example because of other things that T&O talked about with that example of you wouldn't want to get like old clothing that people would see and they would say, those people over there, they're both dressed like they came from the 1920s. That would be pretty, because there was a report about something like that happened that we heard about while we were in the classroom that T&O talked about. He said that somebody didn't do their job in terms of wardrobe if that was next level members. I loved hearing stuff like that. I still do. It's so fascinating to hear T&O's response to everything. Alodi's tall hat was cool. Yeah, and Sawkiller says, I think his hat was because of his favorite color. Purple? I forgot what his favorite color was. Alodi's. Huh?
He's wearing a Dr. Seuss hat, isn't he?
Yeah, but what would that have to do with color?
Isn't that a red and white hat?
Was it red and white? Yeah, I don't know, Mr. Soul Killer, whether that. If you can remind me of what made you think that Alodi was wearing that hat because of his favorite color, I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. I know it was like a tall Dr. Seuss hat. Kathy remembered it as red and white. I'm sometimes not good with colors.
Really wrong about
Memory. I'd have to go bring up that video.
that. I could be wrong about that.
So I'm not going to do that right now. Anyway, it's been great being able to do a stream and address some of these things and talk about some of these things. Hope there can be some value to somebody. And I look forward to doing it again. Oh, he says in his exit speech, he mentions green being his favorite color. Oh, so there was green in that hat? Well, I think it was also because he had a little bit of a reputation of being like a... Doe even talked about it in Doe's final exit, I think. That he was like a class clown. Which wasn't extensive. Just he had funny things to say and do sometimes. Like when one time we were doing these silly games, and Doe said, if you learned anything while, in the human kingdom that was kind of silly, you can do it now. And so he burbled a P. I never heard of what that was. But burbling a P, you can look it up. The P is the PEA. The green pea that you eat. And burbling was like turning your head so that your face was up to the sky, and so that you could put the pea on the middle of your lips, closed mouth, and then you could blow a stream of air to lift that pea up in the air. And he demonstrated. I watched him do it. He burbled the pea. So he was like a joker. But it wasn't extensive. It wasn't major. It wasn't, all the time at all. You can hear him asking questions a lot of times in the tapes. And they're serious questions. But sometimes he'll say something a little funny. And Doe certainly said things that were funny a lot of times. And Mr. Sorkiller said, I think already he wanted to make a little humor before leaving. Yes, I would say that. He wanted to be a little bit humorous. Because there was certainly a serious event. And he wasn't downplaying that at all. But Junodi was a little humorous too when she said 39 to beam up. That was a way of being a little light about it. Because they did have a very, very, very strong sense of knowing that they were going to exactly where they knew T and Do were taking them to the next level on board spacecrafts. And that, this was natural for them. Like even Riccoti said that it was natural for him. He wasn't dying, he said. He was going on to his next task. All right, folks. Good night. Three hours, babe.